Why don't men talk about their insecurities? Oh mate, I just hate the way I look. I hate the extra weight that I've put on, or I've got so much acne right now. What do you think about that? Can you help me? That's the type of conversation I don't think any two men have ever had. Welcome back to The Mailman, the brand focused on breaking the stigma around male body image issues and the mental health impact it can have on you. So I don't have all the answers as to why men or males don't talk about their insecurities as much, but I can give you my opinion based on basically why I didn't really talk about my insecurities and how I felt about them. Before I do though, it's raining a lot here, and my wipers are shit, so apologies if there's any kind of friction sounds in the background, but yeah, let's get into it. So I think for me it was more about not really having the opportunity to open up, or an example to kind of follow when it came to a male who's outspoken, who's honest, who's quite happy to talk about what they really feel about themselves, and how if they had any concerns or kind of issues about the way they look, or they felt insecure voicing that type of feeling. My dad was always very kind of into kind of communication, and kind of always told me, whatever's on your mind, talk about it. But I guess it's just more, I could hear him telling me these things, but I didn't necessarily see him doing those things. So yeah, there's probably an element of, I didn't have that kind of example to see myself. But I think it's also, males, you were just sort of expected to keep things bottled in and get on with life. There was no, from what I saw or what I remember growing up, no kind of clear role models, with celebrities or kind of well-known sportsmen, or well-known faces out there promoting this stuff, which kind of then led to keeping your feelings bottled in, keeping the way you feel about yourself bottled in. It became normal. I think ladies, females, had definitely more of a push when it came to kind of well-known faces and people that endorsed and embraced that kind of be yourself, speak how you feel, attitude, which is great. I just think men were very late to the table on that. So I think that's kind of the main issue, why it's just become a normal thing now to bottle yourself up, and then obviously when it becomes your job to pass that attitude down to your kids, if your kids again don't see you opening up and being truthful about your insecurities and being honest about how you feel, then they're also going to start copying those same patterns. So I think that's a big factor. The next big thing, I reckon, is due to embarrassment. Boys, men, you kind of just don't really touch on these sort of topics, right? You don't really talk about, oh mate, I just hate the way I look. I hate the extra weight that I've put on, or I've got so much acne right now. What do you think about that? Can you help me? That's the type of conversation I don't think any two men have ever had, which is strange, because we talk about everything else, but when it comes down to your own insecurities and how you're feeling, rarely do you really connect with a mate, or go to a trusted male friend to be able to talk about those things. It's just not a talking point. And I think there's an element of embarrassment there. I think there's an element of pride. There's an element of, well, men just don't really know how to open up and, you know, be honest in that way. It's just not part of our, you know, kind of DNA, that kind of framework to be able to open up and talk, which is a shame, because I think there is so much more to, you know, groups of friendships than just talking about sport, or, you know, talking about girls or going out, or, you know, whatever it is. I think it definitely can improve the quality of your friends groups and, you know, your friendships by, you know, really opening up. But it's just not part of, you know, the mindset of guys to do that. So yeah, I think there's an element of embarrassment and shame to kind of admit, you know, that there's something that you're not happy with about the way you look, or something that's been bothering you. Yeah, it makes sense, completely makes sense. You know, I don't think I've ever really spoken to my mates about, you know, any sort of insecurities throughout my life, especially, you know, at school. You just kind of end up bottling it all in, hiding yourself away, or, you know, as you probably heard by watching other videos, I used to, you know, really hide myself away, even playing sports, you know, getting changed, you know, in a cubicle because I didn't want my friends to see me. It's just one of those kind of things where you just get used to doing that. It's exactly the same thing with your kind of mental kind of shift, you know, being able to talk about these things. You know, your kind of mind and keeping that all in is the equivalent of me being in that cubicle and getting changed without anyone seeing me. You know, it's kind of a, you know, a metaphor in a way, but both situations are equally as relevant. So yeah, I think that's quite a big one, actually. Just that kind of embarrassment and shame, because you don't want to be judged, you don't want to be made to feel like you're less of a man, especially if you're already having, you know, issues around, you know, how manly am I? You know, am I a man's man? You know, I want to be that kind of macho character in my friends group, and then suddenly, you know, you're talking about your insecurities. So I think that's a massive point there. What else? I think the other thing is we're just not good at opening up. We don't know how to. Embarrassment and shame, and, you know, having role models, not knowing, you know, what to do aside, I just think males, we don't know how to. It's not part of our inner kind of workings to be able to comfortably voice how you're feeling, which is a real weird thing to say, because, as I said, we talk about everything else, but I think ultimately we just don't know how to. Perhaps, you know, sitting down with a professional or with a doctor, you know, them asking you the right type of questions, they'll eventually get you to kind of open up, and, you know, it's like kind of peeling the onion, you know, layer by layer, and then they'll eventually get to the truth. But I just think it takes a long time for guys to get there, which is fine, but I just think there needs to be an understanding around that. So, you know, I've gone through a couple of different you know, rounds of therapy for various kind of other things, including this, actually. You know, as part of my last session, you know, we did touch on the kind of the male body insecurity side of things, but how that first discussion went versus how, you know, I was talking about myself 5, 6, 7 weeks later are completely different situations, or, you know, very different descriptions of myself that I was talking about, and I think that's because I learned how to do it. I learned how to be more open and just be more honest and truthful about how I was really feeling, and, you know, what were the things that were really bothering me, rather than kind of dancing around the topic really sort of lightly at the beginning. I think that sort of professional help did really help to, you know, undress a lot of those issues, and like I said, kind of peel back the layers one by one, which ultimately has led me to today. You know, I wouldn't be able to sit back and talk to the world about my insecurities if I didn't feel more at kind of peace with them. You know, I still have insecurities. I still have my days where I just want to cover myself up, and you know, that I don't think that will ever go. But I'm starting to kind of make that shift to just being a bit more open and truthful, with a view of trying to help other people, because I hated the way I was. I hated just how closed and sort of tightly wound I was. I just never really gave anyone an opportunity to really help me. I didn't give an opportunity to really help myself up until, you know, more recently. And so I want to kind of use this platform as a way of trying to help other people, because I think there are so many others out there that are kind of secretly tightly wound. They're secretly hiding a lot of insecurities and truths about themselves because they just don't know how to talk. They don't know how to, you know, voice those kind of real feelings. And it might take weeks, it might take months, or even years to kind of slowly unpack everything, peel away those layers, and really sort of talk about, you know, how you're really feeling. But that's better than just keeping it completely bottled up for the rest of your life, because, you know, I can honestly tell you some of the impact it's had on me when it's, you know, to do with my mental health, and, you know, how it's a compounding effect. You know, you keep one thing in your mind, and then suddenly, you know, another thing adds on, and another thing, and then suddenly you're having some really kind of worrying, dark, kind of questionable thoughts. Before you even get to that stage, this is the whole point of this, is to try and help and give people a space and a platform to be heard, and just sort of understand that you're not alone, you're together with me, we're going through the same thing, and I'm here to help. And it's a challenge that we can all overcome. It's you know, not as serious as we think it is. So yeah, I think that's one of the big things, is, you know, we just don't know how to. But I'm hoping, you know, that me voicing my opinions and, you know, vulnerability will just help you guys do the same. That's the ultimate aim, is to try and help, and, you know, form a community and a brand and an environment where we just feel so much more comfortable being ourselves. Yeah, that's the aim. The next reason why I think men don't talk about their insecurities is because I think because they feel it's not that bad. In a way, it's almost like they will know about certain things about themselves that they're not happy with, and they will feel those feelings, but they just don't think, you know what, it's actually that bad, until it's too late, of course. Because I think they'll try and obviously bottle things up. They'll be in an environment where just they think not talking about things is a normal way of living and being. But then ultimately they kind of convince themselves that it's all right, it's not a big deal, you just get on with life. But then what they don't realise is slowly that's having a serious impact on a variety of things: mental health, self-worth, confidence. And then they'll slowly start to kind of notice changes with themselves, that, you know, they're either stopping themselves from being in certain environments where they feel they're going to be exposed or be a bit more kind of vulnerable, or they'll be stopping themselves from, you know, going outdoors wearing a certain type of, you know, bit of clothing that they want to wear, because it's like a compounding effect where they've convinced themselves that it's not so bad, but then it's starting to kind of get serious and more kind of, what the fuck is this guy doing? More, it's having a toll, more of a toll on that person. And then ultimately, you know, this is where things start to get really serious, you know, it starts to kind of have serious mental health impacts on you. You know, where you start to kind of doubt yourself, you start to feel, you know what, I just don't need to be here anymore. And these are types of things that I've been through. You know, I've had the dark thoughts. I've forced myself to, you know, go on crash diets and extreme diets and starve myself and taken pills and all of these things to try and fit in, because it just got to a point where me thinking it's not that bad suddenly hit me like a brick wall. All of these little it's not bad feelings suddenly just came at me like a wave, and that's when I was forced to kind of take really big steps to try and change the way I look, just to kind of feel happier and fit in with people. So I think that's another big side of it, is if you recognize that something's not quite right and you're feeling a certain way, address it. It is bad. Before you convince yourself it's not that bad, convince yourself it is bad and I need to talk about it, or I need to fix something about the way that I'm viewing myself. You don't need to fix yourself, you need to fix the way you think about yourself. Because bottling it up and convincing yourself that it's not that bad, it will blow up in your face at some point. Like it did for me. In fact, it's happened more than once for me. You go through periods of just sort of denial and just convincing yourself that everything's going to be okay, or one day, in my case, one day, you know, I'll lose the man boobs, or the extra weight, or the acne. But for me, the acne was a serious time of my life where I couldn't look at mirrors, I couldn't go outside. But I just convinced myself it's going to be fine. But then after years, it never did get better. And then I went through some serious downsides and depression. And I'm still feeling the effects of that today. Like having to, you know, if I have spots, sitting in certain parts of the office so no one can see me, or putting a bit of concealer on, or a bit of, you know, the makeup to cover up any red splodges. Can't really tell, but I've got some on now. But that's because I feel like I just need to cover myself because I just don't feel comfortable. So yeah, that's a big one. Just if you're feeling a certain way, don't ignore it. Don't cover it up and convince yourself that it's going to be okay. Do something to address the problem and how you're feeling before it's too late. Anyway, thanks for watching another video. I have been the mailman. Well, my real name's Unpack, but thank you for watching. I hope someone out there can feel my kind of passion for this, my passion to help you. That's the aim. That's what I want to do. Help people, all ages, address some problems that they might be feeling about themselves, because I didn't have that help. So I'm just trying to give back. But if you've enjoyed the video, if it's resonated with you, make sure you subscribe. I sound like a proper YouTuber now. Subscribe to the channel, because ultimately this is not going to go anywhere unless people start to connect with me, resonate with the videos, like the content, and just feel like, you know, I'm there for you ultimately. So yeah, do what you need to do. Like, share, subscribe, comment, leave comments. I've not seen any comments yet. Again, maybe it's because people are shy. Tell me, I don't know if you can anonymously write, but tell me, you know, what insecurities you have. Talk to me, help me to understand what you guys are feeling, because then I'll know, you know, am I the only one in this whole world that are feeling insecure about certain things? I highly doubt it, but unless you tell me, I'm not going to know. So let me know. Message me. I'm on Instagram, mailman1, I believe. Yeah, just let me know. But it's been a pleasure. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next one.